This other time at the same McDonald's, I was working early in the morning. All these crazy things happened early in the morning. And another homeless guy walked up. He says, "Hey, someone pooped on the floor in the bathroom, and they smeared it on the walls." And I was like, "Did you poop in the bathroom?" He goes, "Yeah." And then he just like looks ashamed, turns around, walks out of the store. My manager came up. He's like, well, first off, I went and told the manager what happened. And then he told me, he's like, "All right, yeah, can you clean that up?" It's like, no, I'm not cleaning it up. At that point, big upgrade. I think at that McDonald's I was getting like $6.50 an hour. It's like, no, I'm not going to clean up this homeless guy's poop that's all over the bathroom walls. So he did it. So I was getting paid the big manager bucks. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Rising Father podcast. I'm Chris Rodack. This is episode 9. We're going to go a little bit lighter today. I'm just going to tell some stories about different jobs I've had growing up. And I was talking to some people recently about different jobs I've had across the country in my area. And I was like, man, these are some great stories I need to share. There's some lessons in here that we can all take. But it's just fun to listen to these stories and tell them and have them down on record. So first off, I got my first job really whenever I was really young because my dad delivered newspapers, and this wasn't exactly a paid job. To pay for me was him taking us out to McDonald's and getting like a cheeseburger afterwards. So my dad would deliver papers late into the night. He also works a full-time job as a computer analyst, but he would do this late at night, deliver newspapers for the Trib by our house, and he'd wake us up. This is just my memories of this job. Okay, I'm sure some things were different, but we'd be woken up at like 1, 2 a.m. We'd be taken to this newspaper distribution center out in the middle of nowhere, and we would go into this big warehouse where they're printing all these papers, and there's like wet ink everywhere. You could smell it. My memories of the smell are not great. Didn't smell great. And it was me and my 2 brothers. My sister probably did it for some of the time, but since I was young, she probably only did it for part of the time. And then my other younger brother, I'm not sure if he did it. So I've got 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Big family. But yeah, it was mostly me and my 2 older brothers at this paper place. So we would wake up real early, go to this warehouse where they were doing papers, and we had a big station wagon to fit all of us in when we'd go on trips and stuff. And we would just load this station wagon up with newspapers. And my brothers and me would just sit in the middle row. There's like 2 seats up front, there's a middle row, and a huge back area where you could turn around and make faces at the people behind you. So we would sit in that middle area, fill the back up with like 1,000 newspapers that just reeked of ink. And in the middle of the night, we would just go driving around neighborhoods, and me and my brothers would just run newspapers up to these people's houses. I don't know how much you got paid for that. Maybe, I don't know, not a lot. A couple cents per paper you delivered. But we would do this all night, and it wasn't bad. It was fun. I kind of looked forward to it as a kid. Like I said, we didn't get paid to do it, but I looked forward to being out with my family, with my dad, with my brothers, and it was just an adventure because we'd go down these dark alleyways at someone who really wanted the Trib, and we would have to run this newspaper up. I think I was pretty young, probably like 8 years old or younger. And like I said, this is my childhood memory, so some details might be off. So delivering papers was fun. If I did it now, probably wouldn't be fun. But as a kid, it was a fun thing to do. You just got to spend more time with your dad and brothers, and it was kind of like a scary little adventure. The guys that worked at the paper distribution center were also fun to watch. There were crazy people there, getting up in the middle of the night doing this thing, wanting some extra money. So the kind of people you met, also very interesting. I remember like vague images of this. It's kind of, if you've ever seen Lady and the Tramp, there's a scene where they go into this room and there's a bunch of adults walking around. It's kind of like a vague vision of what it looks like whenever you're a kid. I just remember like big men shouting, spitting, laughing, waiting outside by like a little fire until they left. And so as a kid, it was an adventurous thing. So did that for free. We always went around and tried to make a couple bucks. We would shovel snow at our neighbors' driveways. We would try to rake leaves. We did all that kind of stuff, lemonade stands. but that wasn't the fun stuff. So my first real job was being a caddy at a country club near my house. So this country club was super old school. If you ever seen a movie called, or a show called, I think it's Red Oaks. Let me look it up. Yes, is that it? Yes, Red Oaks. This country club was exactly like that, just old school. They charged an outrageous amount. Now, this was like 20 years ago I did this. I started 22. I started whenever I was 12 years old. So I got my first real job when I was 12 years old. And I think the law back then was you had to be 16 to work, but if you were a caddy, you could do it whenever you were younger, and the age limit was 12. And they were charging a crazy amount to people. I think it was at least 15, 20 grand to be a member at this country club in not a wealthy area. Like, I did not grow up in a wealthy area at all. So this was the only country club in the area. So all the wealthy people would drive into this semi-nice area and be a member. You know, we had people that went to our church that were members. I don't know how the heck they afforded it. This was like the one thing they did. You know, we had people that were teachers who were members at this country club, and I know how they did it. You know, there's a guy now who's a college professor, and I used to caddy for him back in the day. And I was like, how did you afford this? It was like 22 years ago, it was 15, 20 grand a year. And I think it was just, you just wanted to be at the country club. You just wanted to be a member. So everything else went by the wayside. You saved up all your money so you could be a member at this country club, just so you could say, I'm a country club member. So I caddied for 4 years, and you could do single bag, you could do double bag. So single bag is whenever you have just one golf bag on your shoulder and you caddy for one golfer. Now, that's pretty normal. But whenever you're a little more experienced, a little bigger, you can do double bag, which is where you have a golf bag on each shoulder and caddy for 2 golfers at one time. And now that I look back, I was like, man, I was doing it when I was like 14 years old. It probably like permanently curved my spine because these golfers were not good. Now that I actually golf myself, I realized that I would have been like the best person at the country club, and I'm not even good. I'm just average. But man, these golfers were so bad. Our rounds took at least 5 hours on golf carts. And for me, you know, I want to get done in 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And man, were these golfers bad. So we'd show up to the country club really early on Saturday at like 6 a.m. and just wait in the caddy shack. And it was just this cold stone hut, basically, out of sight from the golfers. And you just wait there until the caddy master came down and called your name. He said, hey, it's time for you to come up caddy for this guy. And he'd know if you were good, if you were bad, you know, if you were an awkward kid, if you could find balls, if you were experienced, and he'd kind of assign the caddies based on how well he knew you. And then what would happen is the golfers would drive up in their cars, the caddies would take their bags out and then put them up. And then the golfers were supposed to tip you whenever you grabbed their bags out of their cart. So this one guy pulled up and pulled his bag out. You know, you kind of walk around for a tip. It's just what every single person did. He rolls his window up. He drives away. As he's driving away, he rolls his window down, flicks a quarter back with his thumb. It rolls on the ground. And me, like an idiot, I run and grab it and pick it up off the ground. I ran back to the caddy shack. And then once I got back, I realized what an idiot I looked like and how desperate and sad that moment was and what an asshole that guy was. I was like, man, this guy driving, I think it was like a BMW, flicked a quarter out at a 12-year-old on the ground. And this 12-year-old just scurried onto the road, grabbed the quarter, and ran back to the caddy shack. And was so happy for his quarter. Like, what a Scrooge, poor little Mickey Mouse moment that was. But that only happened once. So I also got like $5 bills from some generous people. So the stories I remember are the funny, weird ones like that. And then you would golf for people. And like I said, most of these people were not good at all. They were at the country club just so they could be part of the community, part of the group. There's a pool there, there's tennis courts, all that kind of thing. Just like Red Oaks. And I would caddy for these people, and I was not a good caddy. My, like, detailed memory of things that I don't care about, it's not great. Like, and when I was caddying, I did not care where their ball went. And guess what? That's a big part of caddying, is finding their balls. But the country club that I was at, the course was extremely hilly. It was like the most hilly course in a large area around me. and there's just huge trees and forests everywhere. So these guys would be smashing their balls deep into the woods, into the creek, into the tall grass. It took so long to find their balls. They could just never hit it in the damn fairway. And of course, me as the caddy, it's my job to find their ball. And if they're paying for a caddy, they expect the caddy to find the ball. But, if yours is a professional television broadcast, there's 1,000 people waiting around your ball, plus there's camera crews zooming up on your ball. You're never going to lose your ball at like a PGA tour. But for me, it's just me, 12-year-old me, this probably drunk golfer, smashing his ball into the woods, and then me walking with his golf bag after he zoomed up ahead, trying to find his golf ball. Occasionally it worked. Occasionally I found it. But most of the time, if they didn't hit the fairway, I wasn't finding that ball. I'm sorry, bud. I can't find it. And the pay wasn't great either. I think we got the average rate for one golf bag for like a 5-hour round was $25. And back when I was 12 years old, $5 an hour, sure, I'll take that. But man, it was some physical abuse carrying these guys' golf bags around, because all these golfers had to have, it was a competition to see who had the nicest golf bag. And back in like the 90s, the nice country club golf bags were like 100 pounds, and they were like leather all the way, thick leather all the way around, way more pockets than they would ever need. These guys had way more clubs than they were allowed or needed. They all had their own names engraved and stitched into the side of the golf bag. And it was just who could have the coolest golf bag. And the coolest golf bag is the biggest golf bag. And the biggest golf bag is the heaviest golf bag. And there's 12, 13-year-old me carrying this guy's golf bag around so he can look cool with his friends. Plus, I have to find his ball. They never asked me to read the greens, thank God, because I didn't even know what that meant back then. I was just trying to get the $25. But yeah, there were some miserable golfers that I caddied for. There's a guy I know really well right now. He doesn't remember me as a caddy, but I know him. But I remember caddying for him. And I just remember for 5 straight hours, he had just a scowl on his face, just dripping with sweat, upset, huge scowl, just swearing to himself, yelling at me to get him the right club. We'd have to polish his little club, hand it to him. He'd hit it into the water. Then I'd have to polish it again, put it in the bag. I mean, the percentage of golfers who are actually decent is probably like 1%. Most people out there golfing are really, really bad. The amount of people that can hit it in the fairway, probably 1%, probably 5% of the people. So if you're nervous about getting out there and golfing, you shouldn't be, because everyone's bad. The only people that are good are people you see on TV and 5% of people who actually play. Because a vast majority of people say they're way better than they are, or they'll tell you they're average and it's not accurate. Or even people that are in like golf leagues, like I'm in golf leagues, people that are in golf leagues exaggerate everything. And they say, oh yeah, I'm a blank average. I have a 4 handicap. And then you golf with them, they're hitting the balls into the woods everywhere. And they say, oh, this is a rough day for me. Yeah, okay, bud. So anyway, caddying, good first job for a 12 to 16-year-old. Whenever I got to like 15-year-olds, I was doing those double bags. And I actually got to a point where I created a system to find the golf balls better. So I had this I was so bad at it for so long. I was like, man, I got to get better at this. I got to actually find the guys' golf balls. So I'd do like a numbered system. I'd be like, they'd hit their drive, it'd go to the right. I'd say, okay, it's by the 3rd tree, and it's golfer number 1, and it's to the right. And I think I did right was like 2, so I'd be like, okay, so 1, 3, 2. And then the second golfer would hit it to the left, to the 4th tree on the left. So I'd be like, all right, 2, 4, 2, something like that. And it worked for like 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, I've got it, I figured it out. And I was like, no, that's way too much work for this $25, and I just stopped. But a lot of lessons learned. There was one time where on Mondays we would have caddy free golf day, and I never golfed. So I showed up to this Monday free golf with my canister of beef jerky. You just take wads of it, chew it. It's delicious. I love beef jerky, especially if it was like shredded. It's like shredded, moist beef that was seasoned. Man, I loved it. I could just eat tons of that. I still remember what it tasted like. And I was golfing with this other caddy who was 4 years older than me, way better. Like I said, I could barely swing the club. I just smashed it like a baseball bat and hoped it went straight. So this kid pulls out a canister. He's like, hey, you want some? I'm like, sure, I love it. I'm wearing like a white polo, khaki shorts on this really nice country club fairway. Grab a fingerful, put it in my mouth, start chewing it. Disgusting. Really disgusting. I throw up all over my white polo. It was chewing tobacco. He gave me, assumed I knew that he was doing chewing tobacco and wasn't carrying around a canister of beef jerky like a toddler. So I'm there with wet chewing tobacco and throw up all over my white polo. He's like, "What happened?" I was like, "What kind of beef jerky was that?" He's like, "It's chewing tobacco." I was like, "Oh." And then I just walked slowly back to the country club with this crap all over my white polo and probably walked home at that point. Hopefully I changed. I don't remember the details after throwing up too much. So, fun times being a caddy. Now, some of my greatest memories come from working at McDonald's. There's a McDonald's in my hometown. I also worked at a McDonald's in Youngstown, Ohio, which was fun. And you learn a lot of lessons working a job like that. And most people have worked McDonald's. I am not ashamed to say that I've done it. I did not grow up in a place where I didn't have to work. We had to work. Like I said, my first job was at 12 years old, and I was carrying golf bags. So when I worked at McDonald's, I was like, yes, I'm excited. I made it. I get a real job. I get an actual paycheck, and then you can get a debit card and a bank account and all that kind of stuff. So at that time, the wage was $5.15 an hour. Now it's like $20 an hour to push carts at Target, and it's not long enough away from when I was where the wage should be that high. But so it's $5.15 an hour to work at McDonald's. There was like multiple interviews. I don't know why. For everyone at that point, just multiple interviews to work at McDonald's. So I got the job when I was 16. That was kind of like my first real job because I got an actual paycheck. When I was a caddy, they just paid you in cash. So I got the paycheck. You had an actual hourly schedule, workers and all that kind of stuff, people you had to work with. And I remember the uniforms. I remember them being like this super thick, like white dress shirt material and thick black pants and like super thick rubber shoes that were like anti-slip so you didn't slip on all the grease that was all over the floor at all moments of the day. I remember what I smelled like when I came home. I'd do like 6 hours at McDonald's. I'd come home and my clothes were just like stiff and heavy from just like absorbing the smells of the grease all day. And I'd just throw it, and I remember smelling my skin and just like, oh my God, I smell like grease. You could just like rub your hand and feel it. It was disgusting. But at the time, that didn't deter me from eating a lot of McDonald's because I was also playing a ton of basketball with my friends at that point in my life. We'd play like 3-4 hours at a time, and there's nothing we wanted more than a double cheeseburger or a McChicken. So the dollar menu back then was an actual dollar, and these decent size sandwiches were $1. And when you worked at McDonald's, you'd get 50%. So 50% off everything you bought. So our normal order was 2 McChickens, 2 double cheeseburgers. Sometimes we'd even throw like a 20-piece chicken nugget on there, and that's for one person. You know, as teenagers running around playing basketball, can finally drive. That was just like our go-to order. $4 for that. So whenever I worked at McDonald's and got 50%, man, did we take advantage of that. There's times when we ordered $20 worth of dollar menu sandwiches. So 40 sandwiches, give them a $20 bill, and that was it. So we'd have like 10 double cheeseburgers, 10 McChickens, and just come up with bags of food. We'd play basketball. We'd just destroy all this food all night and then just feel horrible. And then probably get back in the car and go out to Wendy's and get like a Frosty. Like we were animals about fast food when we were teenagers. Probably took like 10 permanent years off our life, but man, did we love it. As soon as you got in a car, you had freedom. Didn't have parents to say, no, you can't eat that. Yeah, you don't have the discipline to say no. Sometimes I'd bring home food for my family from McDonald's, get a paycheck. I'd be like, 50% off. I'd pay $10, bring home 20 sandwiches, a bunch of chicken nuggets, and we'd all feast on the McDonald's. Even though it was gross working there, and even though seeing it's called a fry hopper, and for whatever reason at the bottom of this big fry hopper there'd just be a mound of grease at all times. Someone's probably supposed to clean it up, Probably me, but I didn't. And even though that was happening, you still, on your lunch break, still wanted McDonald's. It's probably probably something in the food that just makes you want it. But on my lunch break, I would still want the McDonald's. And this one time, after working there for a couple years, I was on my lunch break. You got a free meal, so I ordered my meal, put it out on the counter, and after working 10 minutes at McDonald's, you're ready to be out of there. But this was after like 2 or 3 hours. It was finally my lunch break. I'm just tired. It's covered in grease. Just want to like go to sleep, take a shower. And then after your lunch break, you still have 3 more hours of dealing with the people that go into McDonald's. People that go into the drive-thru at McDonald's are one thing. People that go into McDonald's are a whole other thing, especially depending on what area you're in. So I'm on my lunch break. Meal's out at the counter. I go out to eat it. This guy looks at me, looks down at my food, just grabs my meal. I was like, "Hey, sorry, bud, that's my lunch." He goes, "It's mine now." Starts eating it, looking at me eating it. And I am just in so much shock as to what just happened, and just like pissed off, upset that I'm there. I just start like shaking, because all I wanted at that moment was some fries, a Coke, and a cheeseburger. And this guy just smiling, laughing, eating my lunch and staring at me. So my manager comes up, puts his hand on me, and says, "Chris, let's just go to the back." And I just like shaking, didn't say anything, turn around. He just walks me to the back, gives me my meal, and I just eat back in the manager's office because he could tell I was about to explode. I would have been if YouTube was popular back then, I would have been on YouTube for like a freak out at McDonald's. This other guy, you'd have people come in, the kind of people that you'd expect to come into McDonald's. I go into McDonald's too. McDonald's is good. But there's also some crazy people that go in there. There's some people that go in there every single day. There's people that I saw every single day, especially a bunch of old guys who would haggle over the price of a senior coffee. It was like a quarter. And they'd be like, "Oh, it was 26 cents. Why is it 26 cents today? It was 25 cents yesterday." Or they'd try to screw over McDonald's with their deal. So McDonald's would have a deal that's like a breakfast McMuffin, or a sausage and cheese, whatever they call that, was like $1. So the guys would be like, "Oh, can I have a sausage and cheese, add egg?" Which is a whole other sandwich. It's a sausage and cheese McMuffin for you McDonald's connoisseurs, which is a much more expensive premium sandwich. So they would try to do those things like, "Oh, no, sorry, you can't do that." I was one of the smart ones. I'd say, "You can't do that. That's actually the wrong sandwich." And they'd get real mad at me. And then they'd ask for their senior coffee. I'd have people come in. I'd have these old guys walk into McDonald's. They'd look around the floor. They'd find change, enough for a senior coffee. They'd pay me the 26 cents, whatever it was, and sit down for 3 hours and just drink their coffee. It's very sad. It's very motivating. They're like, "Man, I do not want to be that person. I need to do some other things with my life." We would have the same group of people come in all the time. So over the summers, I would work like 5 days in a row, morning shift. Same group of dudes would come in, sit there for 3 hours, drink their senior coffees, have a sausage McMuffin. Their total bill was like $1.30, so they'd spend like $1.30 every day. It's probably a great deal for them, like $1.30 times 30. It's like $40 they would probably spend on breakfast. They're making their money, and you just got to know the same people that came in every day. This one time, this guy came in a little more well-dressed than the most of the people that came in. It was him and another guy, and I was working the front cash register. So his bill was like $1.27. So he handed me a 5 plus 27 cents so he could get $4 and change back. And he handed me the 5 and the 27 cents, and he goes to his buddy. He goes, "This guy probably doesn't even know why I gave him 27 cents. Meaning that I'm such an idiot because I work at McDonald's. I wouldn't understand that he wants $4 and change back." So I enter the change in the machine. It tells you what kind of change to give back. Give him his $4. It's all registering in my head that what this guy said, how much of an idiot he thinks I am. But at that point, I'm just so tired and don't give a crap about anything. I'm just staring at him, and I just take it. I give him his change, gets his food, he leaves. But I was thinking, man, this guy is a huge jerk, But it just happened. I didn't care. I worked at a different McDonald's, a McDonald's in Youngstown, Ohio, which, it's not exactly the richest city in the world, especially the McDonald's I was working at. Most of the people that worked there were from like a group home. And this one lady, this homeless lady, she would walk around McDonald's in like a bathrobe, and she would carry a teddy bear that looked like it was just soaking in the sewer for hours. So she would just be seen around McDonald's with a teddy bear at all times. And it was just so dirty. She was carrying it around. And I'd just sit, I'd be there at 5:30 a.m., sitting at the cash register, looking out the window, just watching her. Like, I wonder when she's going to come in here. And for like 6 months, she would just walk around there with her teddy bear. She would hold it, sing to it. Just old lady, probably, 70s, in a bathrobe, very dirty, homeless, carrying a teddy bear, singing to it, walking around. So, and then, I'd have to walk past her on my way to work. I'd have to walk past her on my way back. And she came in one day at like 5:30 a.m. I was out late the night before. This is at college. And I can barely function at that early in the morning. I can barely talk to people. I can barely look at them. And this lady saunters up to the front counter, pulls her teddy bear out. She looks at me in the eyes, takes her teddy bear out, and just starts making out with her teddy bear in front of me. And I'm just staring at her, dead-eyed, like, I don't even say anything. I look around, the people around me, no one else sees it. And then she pulls the teddy bear down, walks out of the store. One of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. It was like 5:45 a.m. at the Youngstown McDonald's. And then she just went back out, held her teddy bear, and was just rocking back and forth on the street corner. It's like, okay. And then I worked another 8 hours at McDonald's after that. Another 8 hours worth of Youngstown McDonald's things happened to me after that moment. So it's good to go through these things so you can appreciate where you are, and so you have good stories, and so you can say, hey, I don't want to be doing this my whole life. This isn't the best thing for me to be doing my whole life. So it's nice to be able to work some of those jobs and not have a silver spoon the whole time. This other time at the same McDonald's, I was working early in the morning. All these crazy things happened early in the morning. And another homeless guy walked up. He says, hey, someone pooped on the floor in the bathroom, and they smeared it on the walls. And I was like, did you poop in the bathroom? He goes, yeah. And then he just looks ashamed, turns around, walks out of the store. My manager came up. He's like, well, first off, I went and told the manager what happened. And then he told me, he's like, all right, yeah, can you clean that up? It's like, no, I'm not cleaning it up. At that point, big upgrade. I think at that McDonald's I was getting like $6.50 an hour. It's like, no, I'm not going to clean up this homeless guy's poop that's all over the bathroom walls. So he did it. So I was getting paid the big manager bucks. The workers at McDonald's were crazy. Some of them were fine like me. They just were in it because, they didn't have a bunch of money handed to them. They needed a job. McDonald's was always hiring. Like a lot of my good friends worked at McDonald's with me. That made it a lot more enjoyable whenever you could kind of embrace the suck together. Some of my brothers worked at McDonald's, and when you had shifts together, it was actually a good time because you could laugh and joke, and it was a better experience for the customer too, because when workers are happy, guess what? You're getting a better sandwich. All right, so let's move on from McDonald's here. As fun as that was, there's a lot more stories, but those are the highlights. I was there for, I think 2 years. I worked at 2 or 3 years. I worked at various McDonald's. So I worked at Target after McDonald's. I don't remember where exactly in my timeline, but at some point I worked at Target for probably a year. Didn't last there quite as long as McDonald's and Caddy, but this is probably 15 so years ago. And at that point, they had unrealistic expectations for their workers. I was a minimum wage employee making an hourly wage. Like I said, not like now where people are making $17, $20 an hour to push carts around. My brother worked at Target pushing carts. He was getting like $15 an hour. So I was getting like $6 an hour to work at Target, be a cashier, work the customer service desk, which is the most nightmarish position you can ever get, being customer service at Target. And I'd get there on an early morning shift, and they'd have these sales meetings. So, there's 30 people huddled around the manager in the main lobby. by one of the cash registers, and they have this big wheel, like a carnival wheel, that they'd spin with numbers on it. And it was the daily sales target, as if any of us had any impact whatsoever on what Target could make. Every one of us is a minimum wage employee, stocking shelves, scrubbing the floors, pointing people to directions, and checking them out. So this was their attempt to pump us up for the day, to do nothing, to work whatever job we had. And no matter how hard we worked that day, I'm still getting paid the same, which was an issue for me. I could be the most motivated, best Target employee that they've ever had. I'm still getting my $7 an hour or whatever it was at that point. So we'd have 30 people around this wheel. They'd spin it and be like, today Target's going to make $50,000. Everyone would be like, yes. For whatever reason, I was the only person there who understood that, hey, this is kind of a little BS. Why are they pumping us up so they can get thousands of more dollars, but we're not getting anything more? We're not going to get paid anymore. It's like I'm getting a commission check. It's not like if I bust my butt over the next month, I'm going to hit a sales goal and I'm going to get a $5,000 commission check. A couple of things that happened at Target with me. This one time, this lady came through with her cart, and I was working the cash register, and she would just bang her cart. She was banging her cart into my cash register, pushing it into it. And she goes to me, she goes, why do you guys always make these carts magnetic? It's like, excuse me? This is after working like 5 hours, and I can barely see straight. I'm like, what? She goes, your carts, they're magnetic. I can't pull it away from your cash register. I said, you're pushing the cart into the cash register. I said, move it out an inch. And she did it. And then huffing and puffing, paid for her thing and left. I was just like, and that whole interaction took 30 seconds. You're a Target for like 6 to 8 hours. So how many of those how exhausting was that one interaction to deal with someone that dumb? Now you're there for 6 to 8 hours. So that same type of thing happens to you like 200 times a day. It's like, well, it's not hard to stand there and cash people out. No, it's not. But if you can take that many daily interactions of that kind of person, then you're a soldier. Because that kind of thing like really affected me. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't handle this. This other time, this lady, people would try to steal stuff all the time. And the customer service policy back then was just like, if someone says the price is lower, you just give it to them. That's what our managers told us. They were just, if a product was $50 and they said it was $35, you just change it. And you just make it $35. We had people do it all the time. They'd come by and say, oh, this doll is on sale for $20. And we'd be like, okay, just change it, make it $20. Because it was pointless to fight it at all. There was a couple times when I first started, I would call a manager over and they would just change it immediately. That happened like 5-6 times in a row. I was like, okay, well then they obviously don't give a damn, so I'm just going to change the price. And this one time, I'd had enough, and this is when I quit. I had a lady bring me a doll, and for whatever reason, I was in the back of the store before I was at that cash register job. So they had me like stocking shelves, and then they moved me to cash register. And I was back by these dolls, and I saw the price. It was like $36. And this lady grabs the doll, brings it up to the cash register, and says, hey, I rung it up to $36. She goes, oh no, that's $27. I said, oh, you know what? Actually, it's $36. I was just back there. And she goes, no, it's $27. Because she was used to doing the same thing every single day, probably scamming Target out of thousands of dollars. And I was like, you know what? It's actually $27. I said, you know what? It's actually $36. And she goes, no, it's not. It's $27. She said, I'm going to get the manager over here. I was like, okay, go ahead. And I was there after a long shift, tired, probably getting a little, not the best attitude. When you go to a Target and see the employees, you want them to just be smiling and basically do whatever you want. And that wasn't a great position for me to be in. I didn't enjoy having to be forced into having that attitude. So I probably wasn't the best customer service person, because for me it was like, well, this morally doesn't make sense. You're trying to rob this store of this money, and I stupidly had an issue about that whenever it was obviously obvious that the people running the place didn't care. But this one day, had enough. So she starts like verbally attacking me a little bit, and I'm just giving her attitude, not backing down. And it gets to the point, before the manager comes over, she says that after my shift, her boyfriend's gonna be waiting for me outside in the parking lot. And I didn't even care at that point. I was like, okay, good. Let's see what happens. We'll see if your boyfriend's out there when I'm done with my shift. And 2 hours passed. They, of course, left. Manager came over, checked the price. In this one instance, didn't give her the sale. And then after that, I just had enough. I saved up enough money for whatever I was saving up for. And I just said, all right, I'm done. I called into the Target employee hotline. I said, yeah, I had a situation at work today. I wasn't really comfortable with it. I think I'm going to quit. And it was like, okay, thanks for letting us know. And that was it. Like, their turnover was so much that it was just like they had a full-time job, just people processing the people quitting and hiring for that one store. Another weird job I had was working at a place called One Call. Now, this was a call before you dig call center. And I worked there because at that time they were paying way above average because there's a little bit more responsibility. These are people you called into and said, hey, can I dig in my backyard so I don't blow myself up because I want to build an in-ground pool? And you'd call someone like me, and I would pull up this computerized map that had all the pipelines already on it, and I would tell you if you're allowed to dig, or I'd tell you exactly where the pipes were, where the gas lines were. So there's this business by our house that was this call before you dig center, and they would be the call center for various states. I was assigned to Texas. Now, I was one of many people in our family who worked there, and the first person in our family who worked there did way too good of a job, and he set the standards way too high. He was really organized about it. And then after him, the skill level just went down and down. So I got to work with a bunch of interesting people and talk to a lot of interesting people on there, including someone from a nudist camp. So I was the Texas One Call guy. And what I would do, I'd just sit at my desk and wait for the phone to ring. So the phone would ring. It'd be like a farmer in Texas. And he'd be like, hey, one time he's like, hey, I want to bury my horse. And he'd call us and he'd be like, okay, I am 50 feet off of State Road 29 to the northeast, and it's going to be a 50 square foot radius. And I'd have to check my map, enter those things in, and say, yes, you're good to go, or sorry, there's a pipeline right there. Or we'd have to notify the utilities that he's going to be digging. That's mostly what we did. We'd notify the utilities that this guy's going to be digging. And then the utility company would, with spray paint, mark where the pipes are, like the natural gas line, the electrical line, stuff like that. So one time this guy comes in. He's kind of embarrassed. He's like, yeah, I'm at this, blah, 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 gives me the directions. I find it on the map. He goes, I have this really big hole I need to make in the ground. I was like, oh, what are you making? And he was like, a pool. It's great. And I had to enter the name of the camp he was at. It ended up being like a nudist camp. And he was so embarrassed to tell me. So he's building this pool for this nudist camp out in the sticks of Texas. One time, it was probably at the end of my shift, I didn't have my directions correct, which is not good for that job. 99% of the time I was very accurate, but this one time I wasn't. So this guy said, on this road, I'm to the east of this road, and map out like a 500 square foot grid for me. So I had to map it out and then call the utilities, and they had to come out and draw the lines on it. And I went to the west, which is not good. So he started his project to the east of the road where he told me, and found some pipelines. Luckily, he didn't blow himself up or hit like a gas pipeline. So he had to call our call center, like, hey, I just talked to this dude. He gave me the wrong thing. So I got my wrist slapped. Didn't get fired, amazingly. I would have fired myself, but they didn't fire me. But after that, I had put sticky notes on my screen based on how I was looking at the map that said east and west, north and south, just in case if I was tired that day, at my job, I wouldn't make that mistake again, because that really freaked me out. I was like, oh my goodness, this guy could have backhoed into a gas line and basically blown himself up because I was tired that day. So I put those sticky notes up. I did find a great way to avoid getting calls, which isn't the best thing. So it was me and one other girl working the Texas One Call system. And what would happen is the phone system was set up to go to her and then to go to me. It would rotate between the two of us. Somehow they were able to set it up like that. I figured out that if I just lifted my phone up and put it back down on the hook, she would automatically get calls. So she would get like multiple calls in a row while I was sitting at my desk, because she would get a call, and then as soon as she hung up the phone, I would lift my thing up, put it back down, and the system would think that I just had a call, so it would give her the next call. So she'd get like 5-6 calls in a row. And I remember one day she was like, "You've been sitting here for 30 minutes and didn't get a single call. What's happening?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. Crazy." But didn't do that all the time, but it was kind of funny. All right, everyone. I did take a little break there. I was having too much fun talking about my old jobs, and then I had to go to my physical therapy for my shoulder, which was an hour and a half, and then after that I went to cryotherapy, and after that I was so cold I went in my hot tub, then I took a power nap. So I'm back. It's about 2.5 hours later, but not for you. It's going to keep on rolling. So I'm going to keep on going through here because I'm just having fun talking about this, reminiscing about my old days and old random jobs I had. So I think I left off talking about one call and all the crazy people I got to talk to on the phone. We talked about the nudist camp, me scamming the phone system. But I also worked at Macys for like a month. What happens whenever you're in college is you come home, if you're the kind of kid and live in the kind of family where you have to work. So I'd come home from college on my breaks and I have to find a job for like 30 days. So went to the local mall, and Macys was hiring for the Christmas holiday, and went in there, got a job. They hired me, and I would be working at the women's, like the 40 to 50-year-old women's sweater department. So I'd be working there. I worked at the jewelry department. I worked at the watch department. I sold watches, and I was a pretty good salesman. I learned some basic sales skills there, even though at that point I didn't get any commission. I still, for whatever reason, wanted to sell the watches. That kind of lighted a little fire in me to get better at some sales stuff. But whenever I was upstairs selling women's sweaters, I was just folding clothes, wandering around, and trying not to be seen by anyone. Because the biggest nightmare for me would be being spotted by some 55-year-old woman and having her ask me if, "Hey, do you know where this polka dot red sweater by Calvin Klein is? It's a size 34. And I'd pick, no. So basically the entire game for me was try not to be found. So I would just, Macys is huge, so I would just go from place to place, unfolding clothes, folding them back on. There could be a display that was perfectly neat and beautiful, and I would just mess it up, do it again, make sure I looked like I was busy the entire time. These are like my college days, so when I was on break, practicing saxophone. So, Macys was not my life calling, but I learned some basic sales skills, and also how to be kept busy. I landscaped a lot. I landscaped for probably 4 years throughout all this whole period. There was one legitimate landscaping company I worked for and an illegitimate landscaping company I worked for. And what I began to learn with, and all my brothers worked for landscaping companies at some point in their lives, is that anyone can start a landscaping company. Really, anyone can start any business. And the quality of person you meet on that journey varies greatly. The legitimate landscaping company had payroll, human resources person. They had schedules. You got paid on time. They had equipment. All of the things that you would be like, well, yeah, of course. But yeah, whenever you go towards these kind of new small business people who just, buy a lawnmower and call themselves a landscaping company, you can run into anyone. And the legitimate guy was actually a really good businessman, and I enjoyed having truck rides with him where he would talk to me about starting a business and if I would ever want to start a business, and he talked to me about his journey. But he also kind of got hot-headed sometimes, and we went to one of his buddies was a dog trainer, and they had a huge farm, and our job for that day was we were cutting down like 15 trees, grinding the stumps, cutting it up into firewood, and then mulching chipping all the branches into a chipper. And these chippers for these kind of jobs are really big, really dangerous. So I was the chipper guy. So the other people would be cutting down the trees, and they would make a huge pile of branches by me, and I would just one by one throw the branches into the chipper. And this is like an 8-hour day. We're about an hour away from our house. And it's sunny, and I'm just getting tired. So I'm just pushing these branches into the chipper, slowly, methodically, and I must have not have looked very safe doing it, because the lady who lived at the house came running out. She's like, "Oh my goodness, you almost got swept in there." She's like, "The branch behind you was coming, and you were bent all the way into the chipper." I was like, that shocked me, because I could just imagine myself getting pulled into this chipping machine over something stupid like not paying attention. And from then on, I was just wide awake for the rest of the time. But you're for 8 hours straight throwing branches into a chipping machine. You can daze off a little bit and forget that, man, in front of you is death. Because the danger is that I put a long branch into the chipping machine, and behind me there's a horizontal branch that pushes me forward as the big branch is being pulled forward, and that would have been it for me. A ton of great guys I work with there that kind of cycle through. Then you also have the guys who are there for their entire careers, who are the foremen. But any landscaping job makes you realize, hey, do I want to do this forever? Do I want to do this hard physical manual labor forever, or do I want to move on to something? And for me, it made me realize, I don't want to do this forever. And then I had the illegitimate landscaping company I worked for, where basically we had to kind of outsmart the guy to just get basic things like getting paid. So he'd say, "Okay, meet me at this house at 7:30 a.m. We would get there at 7:30 a.m. He would show up at 8:45, and then he would say, "Okay, well, you get paid from 8:45 to 3." We'd say, "No, we were here at 7:30. Said, "Yeah, but I didn't get here till 8:45, and we didn't start working till 9, so you only got 6 hours." And luckily, I had a big crew of people with me, and he was easily pressured into things, so we were able to pressure him into, actually pay us at the right time. He was kind of like a Michael Scott type of character on The Office, where he wanted to be one of the bros, but he also had to be the boss. But he was also greedy. He wanted to make money. So within there were all kind of situations. Like, no one ever wanted to ride in his truck to the job. So we'd go from one job to the next job, and it would just be a race. Okay, who can get into the other truck, into the employee truck? We don't have to ride with the boss. And then he'd come over to us and be like, "All right, who wants to ride with me?" And we'd be like, "Oh," and we just pick someone and say, "He wants to ride with you." And that was the whole game, is who gets to ride with the guy in the truck. Landscaping was another time when I learned the whole game about, riding out the clock. Another office thing where they're saying, I forget who they're talking to, but they go, "This is a riding out the clock situation." Whenever you're around those kind of people, that kind of job, you're in the searing sun, just pushing wheelbarrows of mulch, and you get paid by the hour, and you find a shady spot, boss isn't around. They're like, "Man, I need to just sit in the shade for a little bit, get away with it for 30 minutes, and let it be okay." Have an 8-hour job, take 4 hours, and relax for 4 hours. Those are the kind of like strategies and things that you think about whenever you're on these hourly manual labor jobs. Is all these little workarounds to get. People always find ways to get ahead no matter what situations they're in. And whenever I was surrounded by, as a young kid with all these veteran landscape people, that I'd say, "Hey, it's lunchtime. Shouldn't we go on lunch? Or lunch is over. Shouldn't we?" But no. That's not how we do things here. So you meet lots of different people working at all these jobs, and I'm grateful for that. Eventually, I got into kind of digital marketing things, and I have an ad agency. Still do. I'm more into affiliate marketing now, but I still have an ad agency. I still have some clients. But before, it was full bore. I was nonstop looking for clients. So we'd be on sales calls all the time. And so we run ads we find clients for lawyers, for landscaping companies, for doctors, for realtors, mortgage brokers. Anyone that has a business that needs clients, we kind of run ads or messaging campaigns, different things to bring them clients. So to get to that point, you have to learn a set of skills, but you also have to be on sales calls, which are fun when you close the client or if you're talking to someone. But if you are stuck with a person who knows they're not going to close, who knows they don't want your service but just wants to talk, man, is that a nightmare. Because that's your life just wasting away there. If you close the client, then sure, you can get a $10,000, $20,000 contract. But if you don't, then you just wasted an hour and a half of your life, when your kids are at home, just wanting you to be there and play with them. So I had so many of those calls or just people that you got on calls with when I was inexperienced and I didn't know when to end the call. That's another skill, is knowing when to end the call. Hey, this guy's not going to close. Stop wasting everyone's time. He's unqualified. Stop it. But whenever you have to get to that point. You have to learn to get to that point. So I'd just be on these calls forever. I was doing this as I had my normal 9-to-5 job. So I'd work 8 hours, and then I'd have an hour and a half long sales call that didn't close, and I'd be leaving my job at like 5:30 when I could have left at 3:30 or 4, and it was just a nightmare. And because I kept on going at that time, because I thought, this guy still might do it. If I say the right thing at the right time, this guy still might close. If I can pull the right thing out of this guy, he still might do it. It never happened for those kind of people. The easiest people to close were the people who needed what we had and could afford it and were successful. Because we had these realtors. There's one time in the span of 90 minutes, I closed 2 realtors right in a row, and it was like $40,000 worth of contracts for 6 to 12 months of work. And for both of them, they were both highly successful realtors from Boston, and it was just back to back. And it was bam, bam, 90 minutes. Had the biggest, for me, that was the biggest closing session I've ever had. It was within 90 minutes, closed $40,000 worth of contracts. And that was so easy because those just went by so quickly. And then you go back to the other people who just never close and to string you along forever so they can feel good about themselves, so they can be like, yeah, look, I got it over on this sales guy. He's not going to get me. It's like that's the whole game for them. For these people that never close, the game for them is, how long can I keep this guy on the phone without closing? Because then I feel good about myself. It's like, great, but then neither of us got what we wanted. I didn't get your business. I don't get to help you. I don't get paid, and you stay where you're at, and you don't get clients or advertisements. No one won here. It's just a waste of both of our time. But the more I did it, the better I got at recognizing those kind of people and being able to navigate. Do I want to invest my time in this or not invest my time with this? And what I'm more focused on now is running a community, providing support to people, showing other people how to do what I do, and growing this Rising Father brand. But before that, I was really, really focused on the agency thing. And I'll tell you what, man, clients can be time suckers. They can be life suckers. So I'm happy to be kind of out of that world. I still keep clients that I enjoy. I still keep clients that are low maintenance, that appreciate what we do and pay on time. So I still keep those clients around, but I'm not actively searching for tons of new clients. If you're out there, I'm not. So don't reach out. But yeah, I'm grateful for all these experiences because I learned valuable skills from every single job. When I was a caddy, it was my first job of dealing with people that I didn't want to be around and kind of sucking it up so I could get paid. I was stuck with this miserable guy for 5 hours, and I just I just stuck with him for 5 hours so that I would get paid. And that's a skill you have to learn. You can't as a kid, you have to learn you can't treat everyone like you treat your parents. Like for a lot of kids, if you whine and complain, you get what you want. No, eventually you're going to have to make money. You're going to have to do something for someone where they give you money. So my first experience as a caddy was that. It was, I need to carry this guy's bags for him so he doesn't have to carry them, find his ball sometimes, and make his golfing journey a little bit more pleasant. And because of that, he'll give me $20-25. Even if he's miserable and, doesn't treat me well. Hey, if I want that $25, I'm going to have to suck it up and just do it. If I would have said, hey, I wish you would smile more and talk to me more. Great, sure, I made my point, but then I leave and I don't get paid. So just learning to put up with some crap to get paid is a valuable life skill. McDonald's, same thing. Man, did I put up with a lot of crazy people there, a lot of crazy, uncomfortable physical situations working that kind of job. It's different when you're behind your own grill making food for friends and family, but whenever you're working a grill, slapping those hamburger patties down for people you don't know and getting, the kind of treatment you get from some of the customers, it's not a great situation. Learned lessons from all my jobs, and they have great stories. It's great to tell people about, my time working. So Hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed going back down memory lane and thinking about my past stories. If you have any crazy jobs that you worked, if this is YouTube, go ahead and put that in the comments. I'd love to read about them. I love hearing about all these crazy jobs that people have. It just makes me laugh. Good stories to tell. All right, guys, that's it for today. Kept it a little light. That's all right, right? All the past episodes have been really intense learning and me sharing experiences and life lessons. This one, some life lessons in there, but more so just you learning a little bit more about me and me sharing some experiences. So thank you so much for joining me on this Rising Father podcast, episode 9. And please give it a review on whatever platform you're on, Apple preferably. Please share it with your buddies. Please like it if you're on YouTube. Please subscribe. All right, guys. I'll see ya.